Hello, everybody. Glad to be back with you guys once again. Last video, we left you on a real cliffhanger, and hopefully you're wanting more. So with that said, for all you guys who haven't seen that previous video, if you choose to do so, that video is literally right up here on this card. If you click on that, it will take you to the video because it'll give you a broader understanding of how this all makes sense with the references and so on. If that doesn't bother you, hey, no problem. We would like you to continue with this video. Consider smashing that like if you haven't done so already. We realize that we have to earn your like. I think we're going to earn that and then some. Obviously, you're seeing this video on all three channels throughout the day, but whatever the case be, whatever channel you're on, we thank you so much for tuning in. Let's jump right into the material and why it matters to you.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. So just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.
First thing we're going to start off with is the citation, believe it or not, from Microsoft. Because at the end of the day, if we're talking about more reasons for why QNT will be the most expensive token, notice I said token and not coin, in history, well, is it truly what is referred to as a quantum financial operating system? Call it a part two. Let's jump into all of it and why it matters. The thing that we kind of left you on the cliffhanger on is this, and basically it's referred to as the concept of an interlocked XOR function. Again, I'm not talking about Soramitsu. Some of you guys are into that, but Soramitsu did crash to $15. Hey, I'm rooting for all your success, but look at this for a second. In this article that dates back to February of 2024, this is cited strictly from who? It's actually Microsoft. And like it says, AI Skills Fest. Now, what you see in the documentation talks about specifically XOR, which performs an atomic XOR operation on specified long values. The function prevents more than one thread from using the same variable simultaneously. The thing I want to point out is this, and that is when it comes to all this technology and so on, the bottom line is for blockchain moving forward in DLT, you can't have multiple spend functions. Think about what this means moving forward, not only from the Microsoft citation, but for Quant with the Overledger operating system. Yes, an operating system for blockchain and DLT moving forward. Blockchain agnostic. As I get more back into this, well, what we have here is this next part. Enter in the people that we introduced originally from the first video. These key people. Who are these people? Why do they matter? Well, we're going to get into that because when you see the pictures, these people are from some big conglomerates. And who are they literally doing the handshake with? Well, there you go. Augustine Carstens of the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central banks. As you see in the middle, you have Pablo Hernandez, and you also have Ian Goldfawn. I mentioned Ian in the last particular video. Why, again, is this so important? Well, for one, Ian Goldfawn is the president of the Inter-American Development Bank and former president of the Central Bank of Brazil. How many times do we see a lot of mentions about Ripple XRP in Brazil? Think about that. For one, he's located in Washington, D.C. Now, we know about DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, of course, in Washington, D.C. But at some point, I feel as though that it's just inevitable that these participants and members of these conglomerates will meet. What you see also back a while ago, Ian Goldfawn mentioned another productive day at WBG, IFM, spring meetings. Of course, we've been there and done that, but these deals happen. And again, wasn't necessarily shared on all of the platforms that you're familiar with, but on the case, whatever the case be, we're citing. Let's take you to the next part. Ian Goldfawn points out this. He says, back then at least, financial inclusion can help boost LAChain's potential, together with the Bank for International Settlements as part of our ongoing partnership. MOU, we are launching FUSE, F-U-S-S-E. This joint project aims to increase financial inclusion to reduce poverty. The project offers central bank's open source technology that will what? And if anything, it's the whole concept of it coming together, of course, with the BIS. Speaking of the BIS, back to Augustine Carstens. Because when we talk about a blockchain operating system, how do you modernize it all? As you guys are fully aware, when it comes to Windows and Microsoft and its operating system, think about that for a moment. Think about back in the day, if you're old school like myself, when it came to MS DOS. DOS was abandoned basically in Windows XP. Well, they have had multiple versions of that operating system, the Windows operating system. We should look at Quant in that same regard, and we basically have. With Overledger 2.0, back in basically March of 2022, they upgraded to that 2.0 version, which provided what is referred to as specifically Hyperledger Fabric support, Hyperledger Besu, and so on. When we look at Microsoft, think about all the new things that have been added since the period of Web 1 to Web 2 and where we're going with Web 3. While we're currently in Web 2.5, again, understand there is even the evolution of these technologies moving forward. So again, Augustine Carstens, because if I didn't mention this, this might have flown right past the top of your head. As I pulled this up, Augustine Carstens mentioned specifically the point of modernization of payment systems. Think about those systems and digital financial infrastructures, how it holds great importance as a stepping stone to the digitalization of finance and the economy, and will help to support economic development, of course, in Latin America. Now, again, Augustine Carstens, because even if you get more further into the BIS Innovation Hub citations, well, it's the whole key thing that, boom, boil it, mash it, stick it, and stew. They need a fully scalable settlement engine, which is called Fuse. Remember when we talked about engine with Quant? Yes, and how that was a strategic partnership. They were formerly known as Velocity. Well, whatever the case be, it's a strategic framework for quantum cryptography in Fuse, cited all the way back roughly this time last year. Now, before I kick it over to these two gentlemen, understand this. When you see the citations, back to the original PDF that we shared, LAChain is the framework for permission public blockchain networks. But who is part of that network? Well, like I said, from blockchain tech to blockchain networks. And like it also mentions, quantum technologies. Who are part of those technologies? I think you already know the answer to that because, again, when we get into it all, even in the other citations, we see specifically speaking the whole want need for a bank DLT infrastructure. I'll blow that up a little bit bigger because when you get further into it, it says the DLT infrastructure can be maintained by each individual bank or institution, though this could be also provided as a service. Think about that, a service. Maybe blockchain as a service by a national or regional DLN, distributed ledger network. Think about the network. What is OVN? The Overledger Network, and like it mentions, the LAChain. So Gilbert Verdi has already mentioned the whole want and need for these particular technologies, whether it's a Latin American dollar. But again, if you look into it, the multi-jurisdiction, multi-currency, multi-regional scheme support, the Quant MLTS allows the operation of accounts and multiple currencies, as well as accounts for FX liquidity providers. Indeed, it is one of the key objectives of the LAChain project described. And I know it's a little bit blurry. It was taken from a person's cell phone. So, again, this is where our brothers in this space, these particular gentlemen, are going to come into play because, guys, gals, ladies, and gentlemen, the way I look at it is there's something big going on. And when we look more into it, clearly, Quant, with their Overledger operating system, the Overledger OVN, Overledger Network, Gilbert Verdi has pointed out that the OVN is actually so much bigger than Quant. Take it away, you two.
So you have to remember that Microsoft is a participating member of ISO TC 307. And to know what they were for the internet when we went from dial-up to Wi-Fi where we sit right now, and the deployment of Windows globally as that operating system, bringing everyone into this harmonious space that we now know as the internet. The same exact thing is now happening with the OVN, where Microsoft being a part of ISO TC 307 alongside of IBM, which is that first layer of internet going all the way back to dial-up, is literally the stacking stones. It's that first layer, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And them using LAChain, they are using that Central and South American payment structure, that the format of what they're doing down there. And now from this document that we just saw, they're calling it the framework for DLT. That's almost like we can call it the testing ground to ensure that when everything is ready to go up and live globally, they've already had, because the thing about LACchain has been up and running since 2023. We're now 2 years into LACchain being in existence. So by the time their deployment of their wholesale CBDCs by 2026, that's the 3 years into LACchain. By the time of their retail deployment of CBDCs by 2028, you see, this is literally, they're building out the framework right in front of our faces. And in the video that I'm going to bring up, Gilbert Verdian literally says, we're doing this LACchain in Central South America first, but we're then connecting that to the US. It's the testing ground for it all. And this document just proves that even more, that it's because it's calling it the actual framework for DLTs and countries to run on. So there you go, brother. I kick it over to you.
Yeah, no, and you see that the LAChain project is technically sponsored by the Interdevelopment Bank, and my understanding, Interdevelopment Bank is kind of like the IMF. It doesn't get bigger than that, right? And the IMF is a lender of last resort. It's the only lender of last resort we have. And my goodness, I wish I had time to go deep into the IMF and what they really represent. But you know, when they tell you, this is for the people, you know, it's it's not for the people. This is not for the people. Oh my goodness, the IMF, they are so powerful. Basically, like, they're gonna lend money to a country and they're gonna say, all right, you're gonna pay us back by privatizing all of your resources, and the people get nothing. Okay, the people get nothing. And if the presidents don't go with that, well, these are the type of situation where you usually get a president overthrown or country invaded. I mean, it gets deep. But the Interdevelopment Bank is kind of like the IMF, and they're the ones that are behind LAChain. And it's just like you said, it's a framework. And the BIS, well, that's why you see the BIS with them, because it's the central banks of all central banks. And it just doesn't get deeper. And then you have the three-letter agencies that are involved in that and coordinating certain things, and it goes really deep. Like, this is really big. Anyways, it's not for the people. It's not for the benefit of people. Okay. But yeah, no, it doesn't get bigger than the Interdevelopment Bank, which is kind of like the right arm of the IMF or connected to the IMF. It's all the same people. BIS, Interdevelopment Bank, IMF, and it's doesn't get bigger. It just doesn't get bigger.
Most people don't realize it is the banking structure that runs the world.
Exactly.
On multiple different levels. It's, I believe, like you said in the video before, and how it's the reason why wars happen. That's the reason why World War II happened, was because of the central bank in America being put in place, and then there was this struggle hold for power, and then we see that out of that came America being the reserve currency of the world, because the winning of that whole war, then that central bank was able to print money at will, to where we sit now, where we're quadrillions of dollars, or quadrillion trillions, however much debt we are in now.
Well, that day when the Bretton Woods Agreement was made, then it became, the U.S. dollar became as a global reserve currency. The Bancor was also proposed. That's the same day the IMF was created, and they proposed the Bancor, which would be a neutral bridge currency, and it wasn't chosen. They went with the U.S. dollar. Then later on, the special drawing rights of the IMF came out in 1969, and that's technically your Bancor. But the special drawing rights of the IMF didn't work because it never gained that liquidity and those use cases, because the way they originally structured it, it was just the IMF and the banks were getting it. But the smaller banks and the retail people and the tech companies were not getting it. So the special drawing rights never gained that liquidity that they wanted. And it didn't get that global adoption because there was not enough use cases for it. They didn't structure it properly. And that's what I show in one of my videos. Technically, now Ripple XRP is the IMF redoing the SDR. So they're redoing the special drawing rights. They're disguised as a company. They're disguised as Ripple. They're disguised as a private company. But the XRP, so it goes back further than the SDR. It actually goes back to the Bancor, which is I think in 1950, or I can't remember the exact date, 1954. It's the day the IMF was created. That's the Bretton Woods Agreement. So it's crazy how back you can go if you really start digging. It's insane.
And how they all, like, you pull a thread, you realize they all are connected to one another, which is quite crazy. But just piggyback on what you just said, which basically even more proves the point of they keep XRP, the liquidity bridge currency, like that fixed the problem that they were having trying to implement that the first time around.
Exactly, because what's the main product of Ripple? It's on-demand liquidity. And
Absolutely.
if you research,
they keep saying it.
Yeah, and if you research what the issue is, what the central bankers have been trying to fix for the last 20, 30 years is that liquidity crisis. Because when you don't have enough liquidity, people lose faith in the banking system.
That's right.
So that's one of the reasons they want to fix that liquidity crisis, that global debt crisis. And here comes Ripple on-demand liquidity.
Bam. So, it's like here comes Maximus on-demand liquidity.
On-demand liquidity.
Guys, we're going to leave you with this, okay? So they mentioned about this crisis that's existed for about 30 years. We want to keep you on the hook of this because we have a whopper of one to get into, and that is how Quant has, basically speaking, solving a real solution that, for one, the European Central Bank has needed, and believe it or not, before I spill the beans about this, this has dated back in documentation since 1961. We'll share the receipts with you on the next episode. And if you listen to the entire outline, simply type in this key phrase or term, word, into the comments. And that is the receipts. And we'll know that you listened to the entire outline. On behalf of myself, Jesse of Apex Crypto Consulting NFA, and King Channing over at King Channing on his channel. Saying goes, know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. We'll see you on the next one.